SPAC Solutions, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. The City of Edina hired SPAC Solutions to develop a presentation to teach elected officials, appointed commissioners, and government staff what they need to know to effectively review a development's traffic impact study. Today, we're going to share the first phase of the strategic transportation planning method for developments. But we want you to join the conversation. Mike and Bryant want your feedback on the framework they've developed. Use the chat box on your screen to ask questions or share your experience throughout the presentation. We hope to have a lively Q&A at the end of the presentation. Traffic Corner Tuesday webinar series has been brought to you in the past by Mike on Traffic, but we have exciting news to share with you today. We've merged all our companies into one entity called SPAC Solutions in order to help you succeed better. SPAC Solutions provides data collection technologies and transportation system guidance for government staff and their contractors to help them tame congestion and eliminate traffic fatalities. Please check out spacsolutions.com to learn more. Now, today's presenters are Mike Spack and Brian Fiesek. Mike is the creative force and principal writer for the industry-leading blog Mike on Traffic, and Brian is the president of SPAC Solutions and regularly contributes to Mike on Traffic, as well as co-hosts these webinars with Mike. Mike and Brian are licensed professional engineers and certified professional traffic operations engineers. Together, they have over 40 years of experience in traffic and transportation engineering. So let's dive right in and let our experts take over from there.
Thanks, Paul. And we're happy to be with you today. And before we get into today's webinar, which is the first part of a three-part series on how we're revamping traffic impact studies, we're excited to share with you our soft launch of merging into SPAC Solutions. And I wanted to preview for a couple minutes what we have coming up. So if we get over to our website, spacsolutions.com, you can scroll around here. We're going to load this up. So you can scroll down. We have a lot of information targeted at how we can help you by who you are, the services we provide. But as we go down all the way to the bottom,
I'm getting there.
Brian's scrolling down. We're launching something called the WISE portal. And this is tying in to what we've been working a lot on the last 3 months, and also what we are going to be working on really for the next 6 months. So click on the sign up now, Bryant. And hopefully do the sign in.
Yep.
And my login credentials are in the PowerPoint. I'm Spack at spacsolutions.com once you're registered. And what we're doing is we're building a hub that we've developed. We have over 900 blog posts. We're approaching 50 of these half-hour webinars. We've written books. We have guides. Just a tremendous amount of information. And it's been pointed out to us really, we need to take a step back and curate our information versus just keep pouring more on. And that is what we're doing with this portal. So you can log into the portal, and if you scroll down, you'll see different reference cards that you can download of different checklists and helpful things to help you on the job. Scroll down even more. We've developed engineering guides, a lot of the basics. We have about 40 of those that you put them together. Really, you have a traffic engineering 101 course, spec sheets of our different products. But some of you will be most excited about well, these engineering tools, different spreadsheets we use. I guess there's more here than I remembered. But on the very bottom, this is still in beta. But if you click on the courses, these are going to be each of our webinars, and we're probably going to string these together as themes. But you'll be able to go in, watch all of our videos. But most importantly, what some of you asked for is you'll be able to take a quick quiz, and assuming you pass, we will create a certificate for your PDHs. So if Brian clicks on the download certificate, I've done this one already, and luckily I passed. And it is in beta, so we haven't filled it in completely, But this is what you will get to, so you can keep this form for your record saying you've completed, you've watched the video, you've passed, and you get your professional development hours. So excited to share this with you. We are not done yet, but we invite you to go to spacsolutions.com, poke around, learn about everything we're doing, and then getting to the WISE portal. And along the left-hand side, a couple of quick, you can see your courses. If you click on My Downloads, it's all the different pieces of information I've already pulled in. And there's a news feed, so we can start to develop a community. If people want to start posting questions, we can get into more of a community, help each other out. So a lot going on here. We're very excited about it, and very proud of my team for pulling this together. So with that, why don't we go back to our regularly scheduled program and get back to the PowerPoint. And today we are showing you part 1 of a video presentation that we put together for the city of Edina. There's Bryant, the tall guy, and I'm the bald guy on the right, but we'll let Andrew from the city of Edina kick things off, and we'll be watching this for about 15 minutes and then come back for a live question and answer with you. So thanks everyone for joining us. Let's pause that so we can.
Even applies to counties and states. But there's 3 phases to the transportation system. There are the ground rules. These are national standards. These are state laws. These are city ordinances and policies. The next level down is what the city has more control over. These are the long-range strategic planning efforts that happen on a rhythm. They may Comprehensive plans may be done every decade. Neighborhood plans are done as need is identified. Then the third phase of managing the transportation system is the engineering of the system. And that is proactively making sure things are running smoothly, but also reactively dealing with citizen requests.
All right, everyone, sorry about that. Little problem with the audio. We're going to go ahead and restart. So that way you can get caught up. We don't mind reminding at all. So we're going to go ahead and start it now. You guys will have audio.
Hi, I'm Andrew Scipione, Transportation Planner for the City of Edina. Today I am joined by Mike Spack and Bryant Fiesick with Spack Solutions. These two gentlemen are both licensed engineers and PTOEs with 50 years of combined experience in the field of transportation. They are here today to educate us on traffic impact studies.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, we're excited to be with you at the City of Edina, going over the basics of traffic impact studies to help city council members and commission members and even the general public understand what goes into a traffic impact study, why we do them, and what to look for. So with that, let's dive right in. I want to start with context overall where do traffic impact studies fit into the overall city transportation system? And we have put together what we call the Transportation Network Roadmap. It's really a blueprint for all of the components of how a city manages their transportation system, and it even applies to counties and states. But there's 3 phases to the transportation system. There are the ground rules. These are national standards, these are state laws, these are city ordinances and policies. The next level down is what the city has more control over. These are the long-range strategic planning efforts that happen on a rhythm. Comprehensive plans may be done every decade. Neighborhood plans are done as need is identified. Then the third phase of managing the transportation system is the engineering of the system. And that is proactively making sure things are running smoothly, but also reactively dealing with citizen requests, business requests, development requests. And that's where we're honing in on today's conversation, is the response systems. These are the reactive. A development comes up, and the city needs to react to that development, even if it is crazy Disneyland that wasn't anticipated in any of the comprehensive planning. So with that, it's important that we give you the tools to review the traffic studies properly. This is not a presentation on how to do a full traffic impact study. But the 2 things we're going to cover are, first of all, what to know, and second of all, what to look for. So we're going to give you a general education on what goes into these studies, and then also point out important red flags and kind of tips and tricks as you're reviewing these documents in an hour or 2. It is important to say that we're here in the city of Edina, but we're going to be talking generally about how this process works, but there are a couple of nuances we will be talking about specific to Edina. What we're covering is our best practice that we've gleaned through working across 70 countries and with 3,000 plus clients, that we are leveraging technology to do better and better analysis. It is possible you're going to run into consultant engineers who may want to have a smaller scope of work, but we're giving you our best practice, and it's up to every city, county, state in those ground rules, the previous stuff we talked about, lay out what you find acceptable in your studies. But this is what we specifically deliver for the city of Edina. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bryant to start digging into our overall 9-step plan for the strategic transportation planning method for developments.
So this is very similar to the first one. We have our 3 levels, as Mike was talking about earlier. And the first one is setting the context. And we'll go through each of these individually, but we want to set the context for our studies. Then there is the actual engineering and doing those studies, and then the strategy that follows. Now that you've done the study, what does it mean? What comes out of it? And so the first thing we'll cover on our line in the context is proposals. And this is specifically, we have a development come into the city. They are proposing to build something or redevelop something. Now what do we need to do from the transportation side of things? And so the first thing, just a little background on these studies, as we look at it, the study duration, how long do these studies take? And typically, it would be about 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
But it completely depends on how big the study is.
Yeah, of course, if it's a small townhouse development, we could probably get it done in 3 weeks with the data collection. If you're talking an NFL stadium, Mall of America, we'd like more than a month.
Yeah, that's going to take a little longer to do. And then the second part of this is the consultant hiring process. So typically a city will not have this expertise in-house. They may have edges of it, they may understand a lot of it, they should understand a lot of it, but it is typically done by consultants. And there are several different ways that can be done. And so for the city of Edina, what they do here is they hire the consultant directly. So they will go out, they will find their preferred consultant. When the development comes in, they will escrow that money from the developer, and then they will have that done by their consultant. Another way to do that is a city could have a preferred list. They have their set ones. They may have interviewed some people, and they just have a list of just pick from this list and get your study done. And then a third way is just having the developer go and get whoever you want to get them done. So kind of 3 different ways to get that done there.
And we've worked around the country in all 3 different models. And here in Edina, it's great when we come up to present at the public hearing, and the mayor always says, we hired this consultant. This is independent work done on our behalf. And that just gives another level of credibility on controversial projects with a lot of citizen angst. I'll put it.
Exactly. So then to dive into the proposal itself, there are various factors that we need to look at. And one of them is the type of land use, and we talked about that before. You obviously have a difference between a single town home or something like that and an NFL stadium. How many phases of development there are. What is the expected traffic? And this is a key one there, because expected traffic can set the limits of your whole study. If you're expecting a lot of traffic, you're going to need to study more. Less traffic, maybe you only need to look at the access driveways. Very similar right along is the access to the roads. Look at those driveways and what they're planning to do there, your parking needs, and then finally if there's any known issues in the area. So these are all different factors that we would look at to set the scope of our study, and ideally in collaboration with the city, with city staff, to say, okay, now that we know the general factors of what they're proposing, how big do we want to make this study? What specific intersections? Is there a key issue that we should include because we know it's a problem? And that all goes into that proposal and sets what we're going to study.
So once we have the proposal put together, we're hired, we're actually diving into beginning this study and doing our planning process. The first thing we do is we go to the city ground rules. So these are, when we're going through, this was in that earlier 9-step graphic we showed you. This comes through, it's first off the city ordinances. These are the rules we play by. These are the laws. Next up, we have any policies they may have in place that are related to the transportation system. Next up, the comprehensive plans, and it's important to not only look at the city or village we're working in, or township, but also most developments are going to be touching county roads and maybe even state roads. Look at freeway interchanges. So every level of government has their own documents and planning, and we want to lay the context of the whole system. Next up, of course, here in Edina, Edina is very good at doing sub-area planning and looking at neighborhoods and great community involvement and engagement on where we headed. We want to make sure that this development, even if it wasn't quite thought about in that planning process, that we're dovetailing into those plans. We don't want to come in if they're a very pedestrian-friendly neighborhood. We don't want to just, nope, we're cutting off the sidewalks on the corners and you can't cut through or anything. We want to make sure that it's flowing into the intent of those plans. Next up, and this is a very important one, is this is where the rubber hits the road, that this is where the city has allocated their funding. These are the projects that are fully scoped out, money is set aside, they're funded, and they're in the design phase, or at least the conceptual design phase, and we need to take those into account.
Right. Clearly, if we're studying a site and they're doing an intersection improvement right next door, we need to make sure we're studying that intersection improvement, not what is there today. And so this is very important to account for in your analysis and what you're looking at for your study.
Yes. And also recognizing if there's no funding available, the developer needs to know that, because often they think, oh, we need a traffic signal on the corner. The city will magically pay for that $300,000 cost. Also, we want to look at neighboring developments. If a Walmart has been approved just down the road and it's gone through the approval process, we want to make sure that the traffic that will be coming from that Walmart is accounted through our study area. And lastly, crash analysis, that if there are safety problems out on the network, we want to know about those, because there may be capacity, but because of a blind spot, there may be a crash problem we need to address. And ideally, in most jurisdictions, that jurisdiction is looking at their crash analyses every year, and we can just pull those out and identify if there are hot spots. We don't always get access to the crash records as consultants. So that's jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
Yep.
If the city can open up the crash records for us, we're happy to do a deeper dive on that analysis.
And
for
some
our
cities will have done it already, and they will have identified their hot spots or where they have more crashes than desired. Obviously, any is more than desired, but if they've identified that, we can take that into account as well and just note that, okay, our study intersection has been identified as having a crash issue. What are we going to do about it as we add more traffic?
So next up is the third step in the process.
Yep, so we're on still the level, putting context to everything, and this is infrastructure and usage recon. So now, we've looked at the ground rules, we've got our proposal set, so now we're actually going out to the site and figuring out what is there today. So as a consultant, we don't always have that intimate knowledge of the city, and we want to make sure we understand what's going on, and this is the step to do it in. So various elements that we will look at as we go out to that site. What are the traffic volumes? So there's lots of different ways to collect traffic volume, even going back to grabbing a pad of paper and taking your pencil out there and just marking tallies, which way are people going. Luckily, we have more technology today. So the two major methods are using tubes, those little black tubes in the road that you will drive over. They will collect traffic going either way and collect other information like classification and speed. So that's one way to gather information. Second way that we prefer is using cameras. We will set a camera up. It'll look at an intersection and it'll record those movements through the intersection for as long as we want. And we typically do it for 2 days, 48 hours. Once we have that video, we can take it back and we will count all those turning movements through. How many left turns were there? How many right turns from this direction? And that video allows us to get those counts as well as provide us a history of it. If we need to go back and look at it, we can see how heavy was the stacking in a particular direction, something like that. So the cameras are definitely the way to go.
The way to go, and it's great as the senior engineers on a project, if we have junior engineers or technicians working on helping us, that we can scroll through the videos later, and that helps give us more context if a red flag pops up.
Final note on that too, besides the fact that cameras can record for any length of time, so we should be recording more than just the peaks, it's safer too. We don't have somebody sitting out there for hours on end. They go, they set it up in 5 to 10 minutes. When it's done recording, they go pick it up 5 minutes, and much safer for everyone involved. Other elements that we're talking about, bike and ped movements, so we don't just want to focus on what the cars are doing. We want to make sure we're looking at other modes, how many bikes are going through, how many peds are going through today, and even looking what's the infrastructure around it. Are they able to go through it easily? Where are the transit stops along the site, either close by, maybe it's a quarter mile away, but just looking for those opportunities. Parking use in the area, can you park on street? Is there a ramp nearby? Is there somewhere for people to go? Sight distance at driveways. This is one that can be overlooked. Not a lot of studies will handle this, but we feel it is best practice to go out there and look at whether it's an existing driveway or even if it's a proposed, you can still go out there. You can look down the road each way and say, how is my sight distance? Is there a sign in the way? Do we need to trim trees? Very important thing to look at. Speed data. This can be important, particularly if you're dealing with residents. How fast are the cars moving through? And finally, get your signal timing. This is important for our modeling. We want to make sure we have the most up-to-date signal timing so we're accurately reflecting what's happening there today.
Yes. The next
And we're back, everyone. Thanks for watching 15 minutes of the first video. next up, next month, we'll be going through the middle process, the engineering, and that part of the video is about 25 minutes. And then we'll be getting into the strategy of what are we going to do once we have all this background data and engineering done? What are we going to recommend? And that's another 25-minute video. So thanks for bearing with us. The first step was more of an introduction. And obviously, we're going to be working on the technical side of this. During our run through yesterday, the technology worked, and we didn't look like Godzilla in a Japanese anime film, but thanks for bearing with us.
The audio came through, so that was obviously most important. You don't need to see us move all the time, but we'll try to fix that for next time.
So we do have some questions. We got time, so now we're gonna get in the QA portion.
Okay.
The first question we have is, how do you set your camera to keep them safe from theft and etc.?
That's a common question we get, and it depends on the part of the world you're in, the part of the neighborhood you're in. We have not had any cameras stolen, and we've set out thousands of them around the country now. We've heard of a couple of units out of the probably 10,000 we've sold that have been messed with, but they do come with a locking system, and the cameras we sell are very discreet, the size of smaller than a loaf of bread compared to the big Myovision suitcase units.
There's no wires. I mean, nobody can be walking by and pull a wire and mess up your cameras either. Most people aren't going to know what they are. So it hasn't been an issue for us.
Yeah, and they're installed 15, 20 feet in the air.
Yeah. With the locking system, I mean, that's been good enough for us.
We do have clients in tough parts, Lagos, Nigeria, I believe, different parts of the world where they strip out the copper cables out of traffic signals, and we haven't heard of theft in any of those places.
And I'll chime in a little bit here. What I hear mostly is actually not while they're being set up. It's out of the vehicles. It's, hey, we're gonna knock off this van. That's more so right here. The camera's being taken, not while they're deployed. But yes, it is a common one. Couple more questions here. How do you address traffic count volumes on movements which are very oversaturated, severe unmet demand in peak hour in your traffic capacity analysis?
That is a tricky one, and it's one that's plagued our industry as long as I've been in it, and I graduated in '95. So a 25-year-old question of how to count the demand that isn't constricted by the supply. So we still do the industry standard turning movement counts at the intersection, and that's what we base our calculations on. Obviously, in oversaturated condition, you want to get into simulations. You don't just want to stop with the level of service capacity analysis, because you're going to have spillbacks through other intersections that need to be accounted for, and that can be done with the VSIM traffic.
And that's part of it too, is you may want to account for more intersections. If you are spilling over because of the saturated conditions, you may want to count that extra intersection just to see what's happening there. Observing it, counting cues, making sure your simulation is matching it. That's very important, because then if you make an improvement and it starts to go towards free flow, you know how to make those adjustments. So there's not really one answer to that one. It's a pretty tricky one, unfortunately. Lots of little things we try to do to make sure we're simulating real conditions as best as we can.
And also look at the underlying data sets to see, does it appear to be maxed out for 2 hours over the peak period, or is there a peak half an hour, or to try to understand how peaking of an event it is. Or is it spilling past your peak hour, or is it contained within the peak hour?
More questions on the turning movements. Are they manually counted on the video? And can you do plate ID so we can do trip origin of vehicles?
So right now, our systems, we have a team set up that does the data reduction manually on fast forward speed. We have been working on artificial intelligence to have computer systems do it, and we have components that we have done. But crossing over 95% accurate. We've had half a dozen false starts in the last decade trying to figure this out. So right now it is still manual. We feel that is the best, most accurate product to get out to the engineers, is to do it with people still doing it. So until we are confident in the accuracy, we are still going to have human beings do it versus computers. And as far as OD studies, the video cameras can be set. We do have a setting. It's manual. We don't like you to do it because the file sizes get huge. But you can put it into an HD type video quality, which you could zoom in on license plates and then do the matching. Tremendously laborious. We have been dabbling with streetlight data. You might want to look them up. They're tapped into cell phones and vehicle fleet data to help get an approximation of origin destination. Minnesota Department of Transportation has a blanket agreement with them that cities can tap into, and we've done a couple of projects now with them. We will be reporting later on our success with them. There's still questions. It's not we haven't found any silver bullets in our industry yet. But no, origin destination of vehicles in neighborhoods still appears to be more expensive than the resultant data to be able to make useful decisions.
Not something you're going to do every day. So make sure you know what you're going into. Make sure it's what you need it for, what you're using it for is really needed. What decisions are you trying to make with that information? And is there another way to do it? Sometimes there is.
So we're getting a lot of questions. I do want to make note of the time that it is the 1 o'clock hour. So we'll keep going on for a little bit here.
Yes.
But I'm going down in order. So if we don't get to everyone's questions, to understand that we do have a lot coming in.
Yeah. Feel free to email us later.
Yes, and we'll give you that at the end of the Q&A. So stick around.
And we're going to be along the same lines next month and the month after as we get our 3 levels that are on your screen. So there'll be opportunity for more questions with those as well.
So hi everyone, this comes from Sam. Are you aware of a best practice / recommendation practice for forecasting traffic volumes to be used in signal warrant analysis to justify the installation of a traffic control signal, given, say, that the intersection was built after 5 years? Thanks in advance.
So if I understand the question right, it's a future intersection, is that?
It's an intersection that maybe changed. The intersection was there 5 years ago, and now they're looking at getting it.
Oh, they're just looking at it again. Mm-hmm. So this falls into your standard traffic impact study. You're going to go through the same process. You're going to count the existing traffic, and then you're going to look at what development is coming in. This is where coordination with the government agency is key, because how much future development they allow can vary quite a bit. In our own state here in Minnesota, MnDOT, they clamp down on that pretty hard. They want to make sure that this is actual development going in, not something that's projected 5 years off. So they look very carefully at that development and what numbers you're putting in there.
And also our experience with bigger agencies, state DOTs, and counties, where most of the traffic signals are at least part of, they do want it based on existing or very imminent traffic volumes. And they also want to look at the 8-hour volume warrants, not necessarily just the peak hour. So what we have done in the past is take those peak hour volume forecasts, and we will get 48-hour hourly volume in the area. And based on the ratio of what's happening in the area, we can factor the peak hour into what would happen the other hours of the day. It's an approximation. There's also NCHRP reports giving trends for different areas and land uses of how much of the daily traffic happens per hour. And that's where we get the rule of thumb that about 10% of daily traffic happens in the evening rush hour.
And there's some information from ITE too. Our own trip generation, we provide the counts for the dailies. So you can get those percentages to take your trip generation, distribute it by hour over the course of an average day, and really dive into those warrants.
So that's 2 keys to that. Back to the WISE portal that we showed you earlier on SPAC Solutions. One, we have our spreadsheet for doing warrant analysis is in there, and also our trip generation data set that has all of the the raw data so you can get at the hour by hour volumes. Whereas if you just go to the ITE trip generation manual, you're not going to get to that fine a gradation on that data set.
Do you know in other parts of the world, do you need to be a PE under the rules to practice and perform studies?
No, it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And even here in Minnesota, it is in a gray area. There are folks with transportation planning degrees who will do impact studies, but some jurisdictions will not recognize them. They will force it to be signed by a licensed engineer. So really, it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction, because one can argue an impact study or as we are pivoting them, a strategic transportation plan. This is the gray area between planning and engineering.
Does the traffic count data depend on season of the year? What is the best time of year to count traffic data?
I don't know that there's a best time, when it's not too hot, not too cold, maybe. No, it really depends on what you're getting, what you're trying to do with the data. If you're near a school and you're doing a school study, you don't want to be out there in the summer, you want to be there when school's in session. So that's paying attention to the context of what you're studying is more important than trying to pick a particular month or a particular time of year. Caveat, obviously, and there always are, you want to be on an average week. That's what we typically study. So count your data Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, stay away from the weekends.
Not this week with Thanksgiving here in the
This week.
States.
Yep, stay away from holidays. Again, if you're at a school, you can see, do you want an event like a Friday night football game or not? That's somewhat out of the ordinary. But again, it's all context of what you're trying to capture. So,
And I would say we actually are doing traffic counting this week specifically because we were hired by a county to do counts around shopping malls, and they want to look at the Black Friday shopping events and also look at December. So very contextual. Different agencies may have seasonality factors you could look at trying to normalize. We have looked at that in the past, but it doesn't seem to get you very far.
we've done it occasionally. It's better to look at really what you're studying. Again, here in Minnesota, when we've done studies up north, there's more seasonality there during the summer. A lot of people go into their cabins. We make sure we're studying those weekends because it's higher traffic. Those weekends in the summer because they're higher traffic for what we're looking at.
Just want to give a time check again. It is 1:07. Okay. So someone brought up the point or brought up an idea. Just want to throw this out here that for the oversaturation situation, you could, if you can get to the end of the queue, you could use the video to capture queue data.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And we've done a lot of queuing studies, and it's been a lot of fun. We're working on the country of Malta quite a bit this year. Done a tremendous amount of data collection and helping study the whole country. And we're doing another round of data collection where we are going to be doing exactly that. But with some of the queues, the cameras can see 400 to 500 feet down the road. If the queue is half a mile long, we're going to have to set up 4 or 5 cameras at different gates to be able to see the back of the queue. So that is a limitation. If we're the government, DARPA, with our drones that could get us 48-hour videos hovering above, we would attack this differently. But now drones only last 15, 20 minutes, so we can't get that bird's eye view yet.
Not yet.
Can you explain in more depth how different cities and counties handle assigning the TIS to a consultant? They this person, Corey, currently put that the developer to hire a consultant, but they're always interested in hearing how it works the other way around.
Okay, so we have a couple of scenarios. Do you want to kick off?
Well, I was just going to say there's the two extremes where you have the developer who hires the engineer and does everything, and then you have it where the city hires them and does everything. And there's some gray areas in the middle, but those are really the two sides that you're looking at. And so you talked about the developer hiring the traffic engineer. They become part of the team. They're in there working on the site plan, doing all that stuff with the development team. And the other way, a lot of the cities we work with, they will want to hire the engineer directly.
So they have the developer as part of the process, escrow the funds for the traffic study. They will ask us for a scope and fee. Then they have the developer escrow that amount of money. And once that is done, then we will be hired to do the traffic study. And that saves the city needing to hire yet another traffic engineer to review that traffic study, and can cut down on that back and forth time.
And some cities have put that in and because they believe it removes conflicts of interest, that they're going to get better results, not better. They're going to make sure that the traffic engineer is working for the city and taking the city's issues, concerns into account rather than just specifically focused on the developer. We think we do good work.
Yeah, no matter who hires
us.
Yeah.
I think most people would feel that way. It's just another view on how they may look at it.
But the nice to have when we're working in the cities we do a lot of work for, Edina, Woodbury, we have the bigger picture context. So we
Yes.
can jump a lot of this stuff we've covered today. We get through that front matter a lot faster, and our team develops history in these areas. So we can come in and mentally just layer on all the back stuff that's been done.
What level of assessment do you do in advance of a proposal? Example, identifying the red flags before they show up on a site visit, etc.
It depends on the client. If it's one of our top 5 clients, we will put in the effort, top 10, we will put in the effort ahead of time. We're very collaborative. If it's a new client, a new developer we've never worked with and is getting 5 proposals and looking for a low bid, we don't do the due diligence to that level. So there's a gray area again. You can, if you're a consultant, you could put yourself out of business doing preliminary work on studies you never win.
All right. What is the difference in accuracy between a manual count versus using the cameras?
They are manual counts, but we believe the accuracy is much better than if you had people sitting on the side of the road with old count boards, the way Bryant and I were hazed at the beginning of our careers. I personally did a 16-hour straight with only a lunch break on one of those JMAR boards, and I can absolutely tell you that I was not 95% accurate counting that intersection.
I'm pretty sure I was 99%. That's just the difference.
So with the video, the people are fast forwarding, slowing up, speeding down. So they're always in their comfort zone of what they can count accurately. They can take breaks. They can come back to it tomorrow. And if there are any questions, we can go back and watch the video again or count a specific movement again or a leg of the intersection. Whereas if you're out there with the JMAR count board, you have no record to be able to do an audit on it. So I can't claim. It's up to how good your people are. In the old days, I know I had a guy fall asleep in the middle of a peak hour count because I had a half an hour with no data. So I had 0% accuracy in that situation. I had to redo the count. That was blatantly obvious. When somebody's dozing off though, you don't know if they are 95, 90, 85, 80% accurate.
Hit the different button, missed a few cars. There's lots of things that can go wrong especially if you've been out there for a long time. The cars will just start flying by and yeah, you get sleepy out there.
Okay. We have quite a few questions. How many more would you guys like to? We are getting to about the
Let's take three more questions.
3 more? Okay.
And then, yeah, feel free to come back. And if we get an overwhelming amount of questions for the next 2 months, we're going to bank these and ask the experts to get through a bunch of these questions as a whole standalone session.
Okay. Any suggestions on how to present the study to a planning board that often doesn't understand how a proposed building or development will affect future traffic? Are any of your space resources good to provide to planning board? I think it's SPAC resources.
Yep.
Members to give them a traffic 101 understanding.
We are going to be posting the 1-hour video in the WISE portal. So look for that at the beginning of the year, and please point out to folks that this exists. This is exactly why the city of Edina hired us, so they would have a 1-hour video to share with all of their newly elected commissioners, board members, volunteers, elected politicians, new employees, so they can get everybody on the same page to understand what's going on. So that's the purpose of this video, and we will be sharing that in the WISE portal.
How do you use the TIA to design the median cuts?
So in this case, you're looking at access control, and this can come down to your access spacing guidelines. So coordinating with the government agency, finding out what they're talking about for access spacing. Generally, you're going to want to follow their guidelines. They're there for a reason.
Mhm.
But also this goes to your analysis, and as you start looking at different things, do you have a congested area? Is it hard for this left turn to get out of the driveway? Well, if it's tough for them, if there's big delays, can you take it somewhere else? Do you even want that movement to be there? Because the longer people have to wait, the more chances they're going to take to try to get through that intersection. So it's a combination, looking at guidelines, whatever guidelines might be there, as well as doing your analysis and looking at those results with just a close eye and saying, okay, what's going on here? It doesn't make sense for me to have this here.
Yeah, and that's a question that will come up in the third phase of our method under the strategy portion of getting into that decision making.
All right, and this will be the last question. Do you find your protocol varies from state to state?
We prefer it doesn't.
Ideally.
Ideally, but we have run into a few jurisdictions that force us into a different report template. But this, we believe all of these 9 steps should be covered every time. So we like to go through this methodical process no matter where we are working, but sometimes we may have to present the information differently in the final report.
Different figures. There may also be software that they designate we have to use, which is again why it's so important. And what we talked about was coordinating with the government agency, finding out what their ground rules are, so that you can take that into account, and then you can take what you have, which most of it should still be good, and then just massage it to what they're asking for.
Okay, so we're going to cut it there, but what I want to get to here is, for those of you that still have questions, there is Mike's new email,
Yes.
mspec@spacsolutions.com. So you can reach out to him with the questions, and then I want to thank everyone for coming today. Mike, Brian, always a
Yeah, this is
pleasure.
great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you next month. Happy holidays for those stateside, and hope you enjoy Thanksgiving.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.